very generous introduction. I always feel that it is extremely improper to come from music and theatre to prosaic words. And I would have loved the music and the theatre to go on and just watch it and listen to it and enjoy it. Thank you for putting this up, Dr. Roy Chaudhary and the students, for making this such a special welcome. I'm grateful to the Honorable Vice Chancellor, to Professor Dhar, the Director of the program, the Deans, teachers, and of course, all the dear students, to have been welcomed in such a warm manner. I really did not know what to expect at this university, and when I did enter it, I did not imagine it to be as young as 4. It looks and feels like a well-established university, and that is entirely, I think, because of the efforts of all the stakeholders who are here. So my congratulations. I am sure if you can achieve what you have achieved in 4 years, you have very far to go. As far as speaking here in Kolkata is concerned, and speaking on literature, English literature, and literatures, which is what I have in mind, it again is a very difficult task, because I really feel it is like bringing coals to Newcastle. Bengal and Calcutta has been almost synonymous with creativity, writing, translation at national and international levels. Even in our times when we were young students, and even till today, Bengal and especially the University of Calcutta and Jadavpur University are known for their very, very strictly academic training in studying literature. And even today, there are centers in Jadavpur and Calcutta universities that we know of. Some of us, I have visited these centers, but some of us who have not visited the centers, like Women's Center, the Archives of Music, the Text and Sexuality Center. Thank you. They are renowned centers. The first English novel in India was written, I'm sure you are aware, by somebody who got a lot of fame for novels in Bangla, and that is Bankim Chandra. In 1864, Rajmohan's Wife was the novel in English which was the first in India. Jamini Roy, I remember why I say it is like bringing coals to Newcastle. Jamini Roy, the famous painter, actually it is, I think, noted and recording in the well-known novelist Tara Shankar Bandyopadhyay. Excuse me by saying and not rounding it off. I know how it is pronounced in English, in Bangla, Tara. I don't want to try it. In Bengal, I would try it outside Bengal actually. So, in his Smriti Katha, his autobiography, he has mentioned a conversation he had with Jamini Roy. Tara Shankar came to Calcutta as a young man and was forced to leave because of the suspicion of his being involved in terrorist activities. He born in today Bangladesh, and he was sent back. So, Jamini Roy, he came back for a short time, told him that if you wish to do Shava Sadhana, I mean, there's different kinds of places that are suitable for different kinds of worship. So if one wishes to do Shav Sadhana, you have to be in a Shamshan. You can't do it anywhere else. And if you wish to worship literature, you have to be at the proper peat, the spot, the location, the proper location for the proper worship. And Kolkata is the peat of art and creativity. This is what Jamli Roy told Tarashankar, and it continues to be. As far as Sister Nivedita University is concerned, the name itself actually is rich with connotations. Sister Nivedita, a kind of a symbol and a link between the West and the East. Coming over to East from the West and getting committed and devoted to the cause of reform and education. It was in 1898 that she opened a girls' school in Bagwala. 1898 is the year Tarashankar was born. 1798 is the year the lyrical ballads were published. There's a century between the two dates. And when one thinks of Sister Nivedita, you think of this woman from Ireland who got won over by Vivekananda known as the Master. When one thinks of a place like this with a name like this, these connections become alive. And when I was thinking of what to talk about, I think this played a determining role in my selection of the topic. I also am personally very delighted to come here. I was mentioning to Professor Dhar how it's after a hiatus, a gap of many years, that I am going to speak on my parent discipline. Otherwise, for last few years, I have been really discussing administration, education, new education policy, etc., which is interesting in itself, but it's always good to come back to one's first love. So thank you very much for providing me with the opportunity. As far as the topic today is concerned, before I go on, I must tell you I have had a bad throat, but I have had an RT-PCR done, so I am not COVID positive. I have to just let everybody know, because I know we've gone through a very, very tough time, and anybody sneezing and coughing actually becomes a bit troublesome for both the one that coughs and the one who is around. So forgive me for this, I do have a little bit of a bad throat. The topic today, community and the novel in India, when I did think of it, I was actually thinking of many things, including what I have just mentioned. Literature in many ways is a discipline that unless one studies it, unless one gets trained in it, it is difficult to even grasp what kind of critical thinking it trains individuals and students and teachers in. We are all students, and students and teachers are just nomenclatures. We are all students of literature. The best kind of training is the ability to analyze words, to see that there are layers behind the meaning, the semantics. I'm going to keep my lecture simple, and the students are they don't have light there, but if they wish to interject, ask me anything, make a comment at any point of time, you are free to do that. So this is, I see it more as an interactive discussion. So please feel free to do that. Because a thought may cross your mind when I have said something which may get lost within seconds, and that is the quality of writing that Coleridge talks of, for instance, in Kubla Khan. To recreate something is what is the power of literature. To critically analyze, to critically think, to express, to write, and then not to feel, and to then let it go. A writer, there are many approaches, theoretical approaches, text-centered, writer-centered, etc. However, one of the major aspects is to create and let go, to allow others over generations to read meanings into it. And these are what we call the different kinds of readings, the different kind of meanings, the different kinds, ways of approaching the same text that we often get trained in. What our teachers may train us may not be the only ways in which we read the text as we become more mature and discerning. The case of Jane Eyre is, I think, evident in front of all of us. The transformation from a hero to, I will not say villain, but certainly a grey character. And the transformation from an exploiter to a victim, the characters, we see that happening as we move from colonialism to post-colonialism. And when I thought of community and the novel in India, actually I was thinking of the vast sweep of the kind of people, groups of people, communities of people that get represented in the novel form, and the ways in which we could approach the novel form through our perception of the kind of community that is represented in the novel. Now, community itself is a concept, it's a construct which is understood in many different ways, much like the way the understanding of what is a novel has transformed as years have gone by. Community is actually understood in different ways. For instance, a community, it could be a religious community, it could be an ethnic community, nationhood, national community, occupational community, and so on. In the modern urban world, even people who live, let us say, in residential condominiums, it's a community. These are the people who live in this, on the 4th floor, 5th floor, 6th floor of this building. It's a community, looked at as a community. However, there are other ways of looking at the community, which is a more traditional way in which it has been looked at from the perspective of not urban sociologists, but traditional sociologists which dealt more with the non-urban structures. It could be the ethnic geographic communities which in some way continue with their distinctive social markers that distinguishes it from other communities. Which means what? Actually, the way one could look at it and distinguish between these two kinds of collectives is by looking at, I did write down, one moment, just give me a moment, otherwise. By Sudipto Kaviraj, again a scholar who lives in Calcutta, and he distinguishes between these two communities. And he says, I'm just quoting from him, that the lived world of society was marked by a sense of community, an inexplicated, pre-reflective sense of belonging to collectives which produced individuals who lived in them. Your community identity dominates the individual identity. That is what he is saying. That these identities are pre-reflexive. Unlike the modernist, the urban collective of pre-existing individuals producing collective identities. The people who come to live in these flats, they already have well-established, concrete individual identities. And they come and live there and form a community, but it is not the community identity that determines their lived experience. It can probably accommodate and make collective rules and guidelines for convenience, but their lives are lived according to identities with which they have come to this collectivity. However, non-urban, old, so-called old or older, isolated mostly communities are constituted of individuals whose identities are basically derived from their communities. It could be caste, it could be the origin, myth of origin, myths of control, it could be the gender codes, it could be patriarchal, matriarchal systems, it could be anything. But it is not something centered around the individual. So individual is perceived first and foremost as a member of the community rather than an individual. I want to connect this to what is generally perceived and understood, like Ian Watt, Rise of the Novel. In the West, it is connected with the rise of individualism, capitalism, and connected with some sense of modernity, rights, individual rights. And this, of course, that is Ian Watt's very famous, I think it's 1905, his book. And this understanding actually has, in many ways, shaped our understanding of novel as we have studied the novel. The rise of the middle classes, the rise of market, the rise of print, and we know of how George Eliot had to reform and change not just George Eliot, several writers of ends of the novel. Maggie had to die. Why should Maggie be killed? Mill on the floors. But then, what other end would she have had? And because would Maggie be accepted back? In David Copperfield, there has to be an excommunication. So several ends of novels were changed to fit into the ethical, moral system of the middle classes as they were coming up. And they represented individual rights in many ways in the political system as well as in the literary arena. With this in the background, however, there were several other ways in which some other critics also looked at the novel in the West. And there are many of them. McHugh is one of them who says that it's not absolutely correct to say that the novel represented the middle class perspective. The novel actually has through ages represented the tensions that existed in the society that produced the text. And even in major novelists of the period I am mentioning, even there, while it is true that the middle classes, the ethos, the ethics of middle classes does seem to predominate, well, there are tensions and challenges which are woven into the novel. Be it Middlemarch, or be it any novel, major novel of the times. And so